Hello and welcome. This panel discussion is part of a series of discussions brought to you through a partnership with the Bowen Institute for Political Participation at Ball State University and the Mike Downs Center for Indiana Politics here at IPFW. The topic we're going to be talking about now is community activists or citizen activists. And our panel, I'm just going to give you the names of the folks because we're going to have them tell you what their titles are. Off to my left, my far left, is Marge Johnson. Next to her is Judi Wire. Here is Paul Helmke. And next to him, Mike Bynum. Let's go ahead and start. How do you define yourself? What's your title for yourself, Marge? What's your title?
I would just consider myself as a community volunteer.
But a pretty active one, I must say. Yes. But community volunteer, good title. Judi?
Jokingly, I'll say Queen Mom because I was dubbed that when I was at the Plan Commission. I spent 8 years on Plan Commission, and then I've spent 2 years on Redevelopment Commission. I'm in my second year, and did a number of duties being married to the president of the Northside Neighborhood Association, and now am the president of the Wells Corridor Business Association. So Queen Mom pretty much takes it all in.
And I call your husband Mr. President still, even though he no longer is, so now I should be calling you Ms. President, apparently.
Well, you could.
I will. Paul?
I've had a lot of titles over the years. It's, you know, I was mayor of Fort Wayne for 12 years, so I got called King Helmke and Dictator and other names that can't be mentioned on a public broadcast. But did the mayor thing for 12 years. I currently run the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence in Washington, D.C.
Very good. Mike?
Hi, Andy. I've shared a lot of titles, just like Paul and Judi and some of the rest. I've been chair, I've been president, so everything in between there, but I like to consider myself more of as a liaison person because of the different titles and different positions that I do.
Trying to bring them all together.
Exactly.
Well, the first question I want to ask you is, how would you define a citizen activist if you were going to define one? And I'll throw it open to anybody to answer, but I'm going to ask Marge to answer it, even though anybody's allowed to.
Well, I would consider a community activist as a person who gets involved because they care, and a person who feels that they can help to make things better in the community, and a person who is interested in what's happening in the community.
Very good. Anyone else have anything they want to add to that definition?
Well, sometimes I think that a citizen advocate or an activist is someone that's doing what they're called to do. It's something they feel passionate about because that's what brings people involved in the community. And just because you become an activist, it sometimes, you know, I think back in the 70s and that, it had more of a negative connotation. But now we have brought it forth to where it's someone who is involved in their community that really likes what they're doing.
I think really if things were working the way I think they should, you wouldn't even need both words together, citizen advocate, a citizen activist. A citizen should be an activist. I mean, part of being a citizen is you have a responsibility to be active, not only to vote, that's just a voter, not only to pay taxes, that's a taxpayer, someone who's trying to make a difference in their community, whether it's their neighborhood, the city, whatever the communities that you define, to try to make it a better place in which to live and raise your family and get along with your neighbors and just contribute to society.
Mm-hmm. Judi?
I think that's great. My word would be passion. I'm glad Mike used that because I think all of us have a passion in us for something, and I think that when you find out what it is for your community, then you give back in that area.
Mm-hmm. Well, Judi, what's your first memory of being an activist?
Oh, probably about 10 years ago when I first went on Plan Commission and felt that I could really make a difference there because I found things that probably needed to change, and they have changed, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Marge?
Well, my first experience was helping when John Glenn ran the first time in the state of Ohio, and then in Granger. In Fort Wayne, it was when the Elmhurst neighborhood was reorganized in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
I think one of my first experiences when my wife and I shared being co-presidents of the PTA when our kids were young, and then shortly after she died, I kept moving up to where I was over little bit larger organizations got involved with the school system and begin to be more active in the PTAs and start heading different positions there.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
Politics isn't the same thing necessarily as citizen activism, but a lot of times they do merge. And I kind of grew up in a family where we always argued about politics and government, and so from a young age I can still remember wearing my I liked Ike buttons in 3rd grade and arguing with my teacher in the 7th grade that no, I think Nixon beat Kennedy in that debate last night, and went on and carried a placard, the Cow Palace in San Francisco in '64, Fort Wayne for Barry. So I was always tied into things, even in school. I was student council president at Fort Wayne Northside, a year behind Graham Richard, but we were always trying to figure out ways as students to how do we do things better? How do you get students more involved? How do you make the lunchroom work more efficiently? Whatever it was, and did the same sorts of things at IU 40 years ago, where I was student body president. And I've always looked at activism and politics. Whether or not you're in politics, activism is someone trying to make things better, speaking up, educating others, saying just because this is the way we're doing it now doesn't mean there aren't better ways to do it. Let's examine that and keep pushing. So I've done that all my life. After law school, came back to Fort Wayne and started getting on boards and committees and getting active. One of the reasons I ran for mayor is I was getting tired of doing this all the time, and I wasn't having time to be a lawyer anymore. I was being so active, so I thought I might as well run for mayor and try to make it full-time being active.
And we should probably mention your father, Walter, who served in an elected capacity as well. How involved were you in his campaign?
My father ran for prosecuting attorney back in 1962 when I was in 8th grade, and then reelected as prosecutor, ran for state senate in 1970, ran for Congress in 1974. Actually, after I got out of law school in '73, one of the reasons I came back to Fort Wayne is to help my dad run for Congress. And not a good year for Republicans to run for Congress, something about Watergate and the pardon and all this. But
trivial stuff.
It's politics, small p politics, large p politics, partisan, nonpartisan. I think it's great because it's dealing with people and it's trying to find ways to make things better. It's three-dimensional chess. It's a game with no rules. It's again trying to get people to take charge and have some stake in making things better.
Now, your administration is very well known for bringing community-oriented government to Fort Wayne. Define community-oriented government, and why did you think it was right for Fort Wayne?
It's a couple things. One angle, when I came in, and I can't remember how it used to be, but there was a process where there were neighborhood associations already, but it seemed like they were competing against each other for sort of scarce city funds. And I remember some of the people saying, well, here's the way we've done in the past, that we'll select 3 neighborhood associations, and they'll be the only ones in effect that we fund for a 5-year period, and we'll really focus on those 3. And so everybody would be lobbying, we want to be one of the 3, get rid of that one, put that there. And I thought, that's, having each of them competing, trying to beat the other one wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted all of them to feel empowered to make changes. So basically went to this setup, let's try to group neighborhood associations into area partnerships, get them to work together, where it'd be the idea, okay, we understand we've got problems, we know your problems are worse because you're next to us. You get the money this year, we'll get the money next year, and you share it around. So it really got people thinking not only about their own neighborhood, but about the broader neighborhood that they lived in. And I thought that made sense, and it seemed to work a lot. At the same time, we were pushing annexations, the St. Joe Township annexation, then the Pine Valley annexations, then the Boyd annexations, and people were saying, well, annexations are making the city too big, and the people will be even further from the decision making. So I was saying, well, at the same time that we're broadening the city boundary lines to hopefully deliver services more efficiently and pay for them more fairly, I wanted to push more of the decisions on where the money was being spent and what services were being addressed down to the neighborhood level. So we devolved the power down to the neighborhood associations and the area partnerships more through community-oriented government. And the idea was, You talk to the police directly. You talk to the street department directly. You make decisions on what you think should be funded and where we should be putting scarce resources. And I still remember I had people in City Hall say, they might not spend it where you want to spend it, Mayor. Well, that's the idea. It's they're the ones that live there, and it's not like I've got the perfect decision-making capabilities either. And maybe they'll disagree, but as long as they're spending it on legitimate neighborhood needs, let them make the decision. And I think it worked. It did empower people and gave people a reason to get active. They could see direct results from it.
This crazy idea that people would be happy and maybe want to re-elect you, even if they spent it where you didn't want them to spend it. It's a crazy idea. Well, Marge, you said that one of your ways of getting involved here in Fort Wayne was organizing the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association. Do you think you would have been as involved through neighborhoods the way you have been? For example, you're the secretary for the Southwest Area Partnership now. Would you have been as involved if community-oriented government hadn't been the way we structured things?
I probably would have been involved. Neighborhoods, associations, I think, are very good and can do things, but it would take much, much longer without community-oriented government.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good basis of operation, even without the community-oriented government structure those neighborhoods are.
Yes, I sincerely believe that street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, area by area, the whole city working together can really improve a lot for the city.
Mm-hmm. Judi, one of your titles is President of the Wells Street Business Corridor. That's obviously not a neighborhood association in the conventional sense that we think, but do you find, since you know neighborhood association business pretty well, as the former First Lady of Northside, do you find that Wells Street Business Corridor operates much the same way that the neighborhood associations do?
We do operate a lot like a neighborhood association. I find that probably we're almost the same, 90% the same, but I feel that we are more focused, and so therefore we're pushing more for street improvements, beautification, facade grant money, things that are going to bring economic development, positive economic development back to our small corridor.
Mm-hmm. So slightly narrower focus than a neighborhood association.
Yes.
And has community-oriented government spread also to business associations? Do you get included the same way Elmhurst does or Northside does?
Definitely. We get included with the partnerships. We attend as often as we can. And we just do the same paperwork and head the same way and go towards staff to find out where we can go, what we can do, and how we can help other corridors organize. We've been tapped by the businesses on Broadway to help them organize, as well as West Main Street. And there's a couple others there that have come in and asked questions that want to know how to get organized.
But no matter how you're organizing, it's difficult, isn't it? Either the individual household members who may not be all that interested in participating. Individual business owners may not be all that interested in participating. But in the end, somebody has to be there trying to organize them, right?
Right. We hand deliver all of our newsletters. That way we have a face in the place, and they can ask questions at that point in time if they don't feel like they want to support or go to a meeting. They still can get their questions answered, and we found that's worked out very well to have that one-on-one contact.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you, of course, were involved in your neighborhood association as well.
Right.
I know that a number of people have seen you at Southeast Area Partnership meetings, but you may be better known, and I use that term loosely, you may be better known for your time on the BZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Sure.
When people come to testify at a BZA hearing, do you know who the community activists are? I mean, are they better prepared when they come before you? How does it change your perception of testimony if that's a known community activist in front of you?
Most of your community activists have taken time to do a little bit more background check as far as the information that they're wanting to make sure that the BZA members or Plan Commission members understand. Most of your other citizens that come to testify, a lot of times they want clarification as to exactly what's going to happen, why, and how it's going to affect them or their property values. Community activists generally are looking more of a broader picture, which is not to insult the average citizen, but it's to reemphasize that they will sometimes go a little bit deeper into what is going to happen, because they know that if this happens on this land or this situation, how's it going to affect someone else down the line? And so that's how you can tell a lot of times the difference between the two. But the testimony of both are very important, because as a member of the Plan Commission of the City, boards and that, you have to be neutral. You have to be open to listen to what's being said, what's being presented before you make any type of decision. And sometimes that is kind of hard, and others don't understand why you don't see it their way. But there's other information that sometimes is lacking.
Yeah, and sometimes the community activists, they're actually aware of the legal standards, better legal tests that have to be met. And so they're understanding you when you make the decision that doesn't go their way. They're not happy about it, but at least they understand it. Marge, as a representative of the Southwest Area Partnership, you've actually been before Mike for things.
Yes, many times.
How does SWAP go about deciding what the testimony is going to be?
We do check into it before the Southwest Area Partnership meetings. We discuss it at the meeting, and we listen to what everyone has to say for or against it, and then we take a vote on it. And then someone is asked to go down and represent the Southwest Area Partnership.
And what's the testimony like that you will give when you're giving that testimony? Do you basically say, here's the result of the vote, or we are opposed to it, we're in favor of it?
We do, but yet we go a little bit deeper. Does it fit in with the comprehensive plan? Whether it's in a neighborhood that is active or inactive, we still support the neighborhood because it can happen in your neighborhood.
And really what we're talking about...
And you have to look at the whole picture when you're looking at a variance request.
So you're one of those people who actually understands the legal tests. In fact, you mentioned one of the legal tests right there. Does it fit with the comprehensive plan or not? So unlike some other folks who walk in who maybe don't know where they stand on the issue, as Mike pointed out, because they need to gather more information, you've done that homework in advance.
Yes, and I do want to say that that test that they come up with, the 10 requirements, are excellent. Yeah. And it helps a lot.
A lot of people don't realize those tests are there to help protect property as well as allow people to do what they want to do on their property. Now, Judi, I think it's safe to say that being a community activist can put you in a situation where you are going to be dealing with public processes and maybe even political processes. When you go to testify before a body or when you're representing the Wells Street Business Corridor in a situation, how much are you thinking about the politics of the situation? Are you thinking about it at all?
I'd like not to, but we do. We realize that sometimes it's not going to turn out the way that we want it to due to the politics involved. Try to keep a level head. Sometimes it's hard. Try to keep your knees from shaking a lot. Which is funny because to have been there and then to be on the other side at the microphone presenting is a very, very different position to be in.
Paul, let's talk a little bit about that intersection of public processes and political processes. It was good politics, quite frankly, to devolve decision-making down to the citizens because they would then be happy with the decisions that were made. That's just good politics. But it's good policy, too, isn't it? How do you view the intersection of those two?
I mean, politics and the public and policy to me are all the same thing. It's politics is involved in everything, and politics to me is not a dirty word. I mean, partisan politics can get nasty, and there are things I don't like about it as well as all of us don't like about it. But true politics just means the public trying to affect policy. And I think that's wonderful. The public needs to affect policy, and politics is really trying to marshal your arguments, marshal support, show that there's a number of people there. As mayor, I always figured out the best politics in terms of re-elect is to do the right thing, and doing the right thing, in my mind, meant letting the citizens make the decisions that are going to affect them the most directly, and that. The fact that it's good for me politically, hopefully it's going to be good for me politically, it's still the right thing to do. That's what we need to do. This whole discussion, I think, is interesting, and it ties into your question, because I think one of the problems we've had in this country is people see government as something separate from themselves. They see politics as something that somebody else does. And I've always said that, government isn't the problem, a la Ronald Reagan. Government isn't necessarily the solution, a la LBJ. Government is us. Government's the people, it's what we make of it. And whether Judy's sitting on one side of the barrier or the desk or not, it's the same process. We, the public, make the rules. We elect the people that fill the slots. We are the ones that staff these boards and commissions. And we need to think about that all the time as activists, whether we're on the one side of the thing or not. That's good politics, that's good policy. That's government. Government is what we make out of it, and that's what I always tried to stress, and I think we really still should try. We shouldn't look at government at whatever level as something foreign. It's ours to make work the way we want it to.
Mike, you are the chair of the Allen County Democratic Party. One of the hats you wear is that one. Do you find your position, whether it's on Plan Commission or BZA or PTA, back when it was PTA,
right.
What kind of collision do you see between the political position you hold and those public positions you hold?
Actually, what I do, and I think I've been very fortunate, I separate those. I don't let one influence the other, because I think it's not fair to let your position on other boards or other hats that you wear affect what you're doing, because you have a responsibility, as Paul was saying. You have a responsibility to the people. They've elected you to carry on a job. They're not interested in the other aspects. They want you to concentrate on that aspect that they've elected you for, whether it's on the BZA, Plan Commission, head of the Democratic Party, or mayor, or any other type of activist board. You have to separate those positions. Do they intersect? Yes, because you're in a position sometime to be able to see, again, the big picture of what's going on and how it's going to affect someone else. I think one of the things that I like to, when I speak to people is, I'll tell you, you may not like my decision, but I'm going to help you to understand why. You may not agree with my position, but once I explain to you, at least you'll respect me for being able to stand firm on what I've said, and then, go from there. You're not going to always win all the battles.
Paul, did you find that as mayor when you explain to people?
Yeah, I agree totally with Mike on that. People get suspicious, people get cynical, and I think part of where they think of politics as a bad thing is they think, oh, you just did that because so and so's your big campaign contributor, or because the party bosses told you to do that, and I didn't want them to think that that's how decisions are made. And I'd say, okay, here's why I decided what I decided, and you can agree with it or disagree with it, but I thought these were good reasons. And one of my favorite lines is people a lot of times when they'd say they disagree, I'd say, I disagree with myself sometimes too. When I look back 3 months afterward, I'd say, boy, I missed that. I missed that one. But I had to make that decision then based on the information in front of me at that time, and I couldn't just sit back and wait. And I think that's true for all politicians. And but when you explain why you did something, and when you're willing to admit that you make mistakes, I think people are a lot more accepting and supportive. And I still have it at the national level. I'm trying to find out why some senators voted on what we considered a bad amendment the other day. And, I know they've got reasons. Just tell me what they are. And, if it's politics or this is the one selling your state, I understand that. If it's you think this really needs to be done that way, fine. But I think politicians have more of an obligation to try to explain that. And then I think people will be accepting even of folks they disagree with.
This is probably a good practice, though, for just about anybody who's in a leadership position of some kind. So, Judi, as the president of the Wells Street Business Corridor, do you, of course, you have easily as much power as the mayor of Fort Wayne has, of course, but do you find yourself in positions that make it difficult to explain to people what the decision was? I mean, do they get mad at you when you make decisions?
Oh, yes. Do they get angry? Yes. Yeah, and I guess rightly so at times, because it can hurt their business, it can hurt their residents, and they don't understand. And I think after a while they come back and think about it, and I've had people come back and say, I didn't understand that when it happened, but now that I've thought about it and you gave me information, it does make sense, and I don't want you to think that it was personal that I yelled at you.
One thing you learn real quickly, too, though, is, and this is what's tough, particularly for politicians, I think, because people get into politics, they want everyone to like them, and you get there and you learn right off every decision you make, every decision somebody dislikes. And I said I could have declared the sky is blue day, and people that want rain would have complained. It's people complain about everything, and so you get used to saying I've got to get the input, hear all the different arguments, make what you think is the best decision, explain it to people, then move on. But realize that there's always going to be someone that's going to be unhappy with the decision.
Yeah, oftentimes the groups that we're talking about, or citizen activist groups, form because of some sort of a crisis. For example, the Northside Neighborhood Association formed because of the potential siting of a juvenile detention facility. Marge, how do you get people to want to join your neighborhood association? You're not in an association where it's a required payment. How do you get them to join?
Well, I think that you have to truly care about what you're doing and strongly believe in it. And when you ask someone to do something, you should do it yourself also.
Lead by example.
Yes, and when you explain the benefits of doing it, and that what they will do will be appreciated, then they're willing to join and help. But you can't get people to help you if you have your own agenda. You have to do it because you're doing the right thing.
That Republican virtue, that's a lowercase r, I'll point out before someone says we're being partisan. Republican virtue that the Founding Fathers talked about, that devotion to the greater good. Yeah. Judi, how did you get people to join the Well Street Business Corridor? Was there a crisis that came about?
Our CDAP, which is the Community Development Area Plan, which was adopted back in 2005 for the Bloomingdale Association, said that they wanted the Well Street corridor to become active again because our association had gone down the tubes. It was just dead in the water, not active. So they wanted that so that it would help to stabilize the community and spread out and bring back some positive reinforcement in some community development, economic development. Also, about that same time, we had some new young leaders come on. We had 2 or 3 business owners that were young, and they said, how come we don't have a corridor association? Why don't we, and I had tried for years, and finally I said, okay, fine, we'll try it again if you're there to help. So, and I think the way that we got people to come on board, which is, this is kind of silly, but it was our plants. All of us talked about, it's kind of simple, I guess, not silly, but simple. I had wanted for years to look like a sweet little community that you'd see along Lake Michigan with these beautiful flower pots. So we worked on it for a year, fighting city government to be able to hang those. And no offense, it wasn't Paul.
I was going to say, it wasn't Paul. It wasn't Paul. He was gone by then.
It took us a long time. It took us a year to be able to hang those flowers. And I am amazed by the impact that they have made, not only with our businesses, but also with the neighborhoods and beyond. How many people come to me and they go, well, I thought the city purchased those and hung them. You water those? Yes, I water them. Hopefully, not for long. Hopefully someone else younger is going to step up and help do that. But I think that's really what started to draw a focus, because everybody is much more proud of the neighborhood, and they've started to clean up more, to the point where we have a little park that we've nicknamed Firehouse Park, and someday it'll be named that. But we needed a trash barrel there. And it's just those little take care of things that I'd gone to everyone and said, I want a trash barrel. It's a park. And they said, you can't have a trash barrel there. Finally, I decided, okay, we're going to have one because it's a bus stop. And it's a pedestrian and commercial corridor with people that walk a lot and ride buses. And so I put out a trash basket of my own, and I chained it to the tree so no one can take it. And I maintain that year round. For 4 years I've maintained it. And people think the city takes care of it. Well, I am the government. I take care of it.
One of the
Popular sovereignty.
Add on to what Judi was just saying about the little things. That's one of the things when I read the book, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. That is one of my favorite books to have read, because that expresses a sentiment of being a community activist as well as just being involved in your community, period, is that those little things is what sparks major things to happen.
Well, Paul, when you said community-oriented government's the way we're going to go, how much frustration was there when you had neighborhoods that said, we're not interested, or they didn't have enough people to be interested? That had to be frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and people get burned out. People give up. People say, been there, done that, tried that, didn't work. people don't trust government. You're trying to pull one over on us somehow. So it was just, we wanted to show them, so we set it up, and we kept saying, you're going to have some power. The police will respond. You're going to have some money. We're going to allocate it. And if you don't get active, then Judi and Marge's and Mike's neighborhoods are going to start benefiting, and yours aren't. And when people see that, they do it. It's interesting, though. I got just as much, probably more. I also got opposition from like city staff people who, if they're not supposed to hang those flower pots, they're not supposed to hang the flower pots. And you sort of say, why? And if they don't have a good reason, then that's the sort of thing you want to turn over to the local level. But also had opposition from some of the council members, the elected council members. It's, well, that's my job to decide what goes on in my neighborhood. And so they were the ones that resisted too. So it's like so many things. There's always resistance to change. They're used to dealing with it one way, whether it's the neighborhoods, the staff, or the electeds. But when you show them that it can work and kind of push them a little, then you see good results. And if it doesn't work, you make the adjustments that you need to make it work.
Yeah, and we saw actually city council members who, when they had seated money to distribute, they would actually bring their neighborhood association presidents together and say, okay, let's talk about where we want to put these infrastructure dollars, and then have estimates for them, and collectively decide this is the project that needs it the most, recognizing that your project might get it next year. Yeah. Now, there are some people who seek out leadership positions, for example, Paul, and some people it's sort of thrust upon them for whatever reason. Judi?
Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome. What sort of leadership qualities do you think are best for people who are trying to be a community activist? What made you a good community activist, or what did you wish you knew before you became a community activist? Mike, let's start with you.
I think one of the things that make you a good community activist is that, number one, you have to be passionate, you have to have credibility, and you have to really believe that you can make a difference. And all of the positions that, some of the things I've been I think I just kind of walk blindly into, because I don't not necessarily see wrong, but I see opportunity in everything that I do. And you don't know what your calling is as far as leadership. It may only be to a certain level, and you're satisfied. But others are looking at you in a different light than what you see yourself. Your wife, your husband, your neighbors, they don't see you in the same way that you see yourself. And a lot of times, if you just listen to what they say, they're sparking an interest that you may never realize that you had. I never thought I'd be involved in politics, but there's another level to life. As you get older, you start stepping out into different areas, and I think that's one of the things you have to recognize, is that there's more potential in you than what you think. Sometimes it just takes somebody else to point it out to you.
Marge, what do you think is essential for someone who's going to be in one of these leadership positions?
Probably to learn all you can about the issue, to explore every angle, to be open-minded, and to encourage other people to do the same.
Judi?
I would reiterate, learn as much as you possibly can. Be open to all of it. I have a saying that I like that came from a book that I read once. It says,
It is good to be a follower, but at some point in time, you must put that good to use and become the leader.
Now, Paul, you have a unique perspective here. As the head of the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence, you actually deal with issues on the national level, but also on state level, and I'm guessing to some degree would love to have local community activists integrated into a perhaps more grassroots-looking organization, or certainly one that's able to address issues on all levels of government. How do you go about trying to find community activists at that local level?
Local activists are crucial to any sort of organization, particularly like the Brady campaign. Actually, we're aligned with a group called the Million Mom March. 10 years ago, they brought close to 1 million moms to the mall in Washington and rallies across the country about gun violence. And they combined with the Brady campaign 8-9 years ago. And so I do have activist chapters around the country, and I continually tell them that, as a mayor, I encourage local activism. As a mayor, I saw what happened when Washington always thought they knew best, and as a mayor, I was fighting for the local level. And I tell them that for our organization to be successful, we need more local activists, because that's grassroots politics too. It's spotting the problem at the local level. It's writing the letter to the editor. It's talking to the state rep or the congressperson or or whoever it is to get our message out. And that really is how things get done. I had a meeting just the other day with the United States Senator. We're trying to say, how come we're not getting more progress on gun violence issues? And he said, you need to get your local activists speaking up more. That he said when he walks in a parade in his home district, if all he's hearing is, don't take my guns away, he factors that one way. If someone's saying, pass the Brady bill or, get rid of assault weapons, then he's hearing it the other way. People respond to what they're hearing back home. And I continually tell some of my board members, it's not us just having good facts and good statistics and good research and good lobbyists in D.C., it's us having the folks back home. That's how any issue, whether it's gun violence or other issues, those get done because local activists are pushing and caring and getting everyone involved in it. And that's what I'm trying to get more of. And it's tricky. It's people get involved in activism in different ways. People get burnt out easy. One quality I would stress is patience. At the local level, gun issue, neighborhood issues, things don't happen right away. They don't even happen when you're mayor or an elected official right away. I have to argue with those same bureaucrats that you argue with. You need patience. You need a long-range strategy and keep pushing, and then when you get the opportunity, you can get something done.
Well, I have a question for both Mike and Paul. I'm going to speak to you as representatives of political parties, obviously as chair of the Allen County Democratic Party, as Republican, former mayor under the Republican label. Do the parties like community activists as candidates? I mean, do you go out when you're recruiting candidates, do you look at people who've been involved in the community and you say, that person right there, that's a person who can be an elected official? Mike?
Well, I believe that they do, because those are individuals that will take time to investigate and understand the issues so that you can move your position forward, so that you make your community or your party, whichever you want to say, to move it forward. And I think that's something that I have found, that we're looking for people that have a passion to make the community better, not just the small community. I'm talking about the United States as a whole, because you start in your own community, but you have to become a visionary. And I think a lot of your community activists are visionaries, because they can see, if I do this, here's the effect that's going to happen. So yes, you seek out people that are really involved, that want to be a part and make a difference in the lives of their own families, because even now, times are really getting difficult, and I've seen so many other people that have never been in politics before step up and say, what can I do? Because it's just, I got to do something. My grandkids, I'm at that age where my grandkids are going to have to pick up and fix the problems if I don't take care of it now. So I think that's one of the things about activists on all levels, not just on the community level, but all levels are taking things serious.
I think quite clearly, Democrat, Republican, community activists are the sort of people the parties are looking for. First of all, they're people that have already shown that they care about their neighborhood, that they care about their community and want to make a difference. So that's a quality you want for any office. The other thing is that they've had some of the experiences. Politics isn't easy. I mean, you get used to people, people criticize you. You don't get the answers you want all the time. Someone who's been a community activist has already learned that. So they know people, they've learned about public speaking, they've learned about rejection, and hopefully if they're still in it, they're gonna fight and push things ahead. One of the things a lot of folks don't realize is how easy it is to get involved in partisan politics, into neighborhood associations. Generally, the parties, the neighborhood associations are begging for volunteers, and anyone who shows that they care and is willing to step up, they can really move fairly quickly. Maybe you're not going to get elected mayor, maybe you're not going to get elected council. There's always a lot of factors, but someone who shows up and cares, they can get a position of leadership actually fairly quickly and make a difference fairly quickly. That's the important thing.
One of the things, too, if I can add with that, it was brought up earlier about burnout. You can get burnt out real fast if you are the only one carrying a ball, and that's what's so important, that everybody, your voice is not too small. Your ideas are not too minuscule for someone to be able to make a difference in what is going to happen on the next level. Because there's some, as Paul was saying, there's so much information. If you only hear one thing all the time and you don't hear the other side, you keep thinking, okay, I've heard this, let's move on. And when someone else brings you back full circle, you think, wait a minute.
Just one other thing on the politics, and this always amazes me too. It's how important an individual is in affecting political decisions when they speak up. Because most politicians, just as I was saying in the center, they're not used to hearing from people. One of the stories I always tell, first year as mayor, I'm pushing to get the local income tax implemented, local tax reform, lower property tax, get the income tax in. Had a council person who had, the year before I was in, had voted against my predecessor's budget because it was all on the property tax. So I assumed that this council person would vote for the income tax. And she didn't. And she said it's because she'd had 25 calls or letters about it. And I said, that's, city's, 200,000 at the time. That's not a whole lot. I get more than that in a day. She said, but that's more than she'd ever gotten on any issue. Mm-hmm. So it shows that just a few people speaking up, and again, hopefully, having their arguments can make a difference. Politicians, oftentimes don't hear that much from people. So individuals really, if they're active, if they're reasoned, can affect the policies that go on.
Well, we do know whenever there's a public meeting in the city-county building, if there are 100 people who show up, that's going to be a big news story. So you're right. It does not take a large number of people. So if people want to get involved, what's your piece of advice to them? What's the easiest way for them to get involved? We'll start at Mike, work our way over to Marge. Mike, easiest way for someone to get involved?
Find an issue. Talk to someone. Even if you don't have an issue, talk to someone that's already involved and say, what, I feel like I need to do something, even though I don't know what it is. Just step up and say, is there something you need? Is there something that I can do to make a difference, because I think I have an idea? Mm-hmm. And when you start out there, I think that's the best way to become involved, whether it's in politics, your neighborhood, or on a corridor board or something. And I think everyone here has just been hitting it right on the ball, is that you just have to speak up and become passionate about something. I have a saying that in this life, you're called to do something. This is not a spectator sport. You are called to get involved, right, wrong, or indifferent, make a difference.
Paul?
It's depending on what the interest is, contact the local political parties. The county chairs are accessible from the various parties. Just say, I want to volunteer. Precinct people are needed all the time. All sorts of grunt work, and don't expect to start at the high level, but you can go pretty quickly from stuffing envelopes to being on the inner circles if you show up. Contact the neighborhood associations. Figure out where you live. What's the business association, the neighborhood association in my area? Volunteer. They're always looking for it. Go to the phone book and figure out if there's a not-for-profit, the Red Cross, the United Way, this group, that group, whatever that you care about, and sign up. National groups that have local chapters, Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, www.bradycampaign.org. Whatever the group is, people are always looking for volunteers and activists. And again, once you say that you want to do it, you're going to move real quickly in that organization.
Judi?
Just step forward. Just say, I want to help out. I've had people come in and say, I'd like to help out downtown with the block parties. I said, here's who to call. I hand the card over. We're kind of just a liaison, as Mike said earlier. We are a resource. If you have something you're interested in, you're passionate, let us know. We can get you there.
Marge, anything else?
I really feel it's important for individuals to get involved, especially in Fort Wayne. There's so many opportunities that the average person could just get involved and see where they can make a difference in their neighborhood, in the city, with some of the decisions that are made at the planning meetings and the BZA meetings. Find out what's going on. And I think once people get involved, they understand why you get involved. In fact, people have said to me, why do you do this? I say, because it's the right thing to do. If you can make a better neighborhood, a better city, do it.
Yeah,
I feel like all of Fort Wayne is my city, the whole city. I've gone to BZA meetings where people have said to me, you don't even live in our neighborhood. Why are you speaking against this child care?
Yeah. And we should mention Marge actually does a wonderful thing. She helps other, I know you've helped other neighborhood associations form, which is a very valuable service. I want to thank everybody today for coming out. Marge Johnson, Judi Wire, Paul Helmke, Mike Bynum. I want to thank all of you for coming and participating on this panel on Citizens as Activists. I want to thank CATV for recording it. I want to thank you for watching it. And remember, you can look for this and other videos on MDON. So thank you very much and have a good day.